Do. Oh, so I say Albertville. Welcome back to. I'm not really sure what to call this series. It's just some policy and suggestions on tackling the different issues. But this episode is called Ordinance Order or Law and Liberty. Now, which of these scenarios do you prefer? On one hand, you live in a nice, one-story house in a suburban neighborhood. You know, all the grass is well kept, mowed evenly, constantly. But the housing is pretty expensive, for more than it should be. You've already had to sell one kidney to cover the mortgage. You also don't actually own your house, you buy it from a renting company. And the grass, there's beauty in the uniformity, but every yard is exactly the same. It's just green grass everywhere you look for miles and miles. Hasn't everyone ever considered just planting a flower and letting it grow? Maybe some vegetables, a tree? Even just an old rustic car or statue or something. Other than just this endless void of green grass. Not even an inch tall. Except for the occasional ant hill, which when those pop up, you then have to call the exterminator to get rid of, which is also expensive at this point. And then you never can get rid of those darn stickies, those little thorny plants that just pop up. Because the only way to get rid of those is certain pesticides that don't always work, that you only get to use in certain parts of the year. And yeah, they rarely ever work. So yeah, you still have to deal with those. And there's no real animal life anymore. It's just empty, artificial. And, you can't really use your yard because, what would you use it for? Back in the day, we used to use or have ball games and stuff out the field. But we don't really do that anymore. Most people just spend their days inside, so it's just grass. You go out and mow every now and again, which mowing is a bit fun. But it's also expensive because you have to pay for gasoline, which by this time is really expensive. And your mower and such. If you have trees, you have to use a leaf blower. So, yeah. And also, the fire ants and the stickies and occasional, if the pipes ever break, you then get sewage seeping in, so if you go out barefoot, you can get hookworm. That's mainly a problem in southern Alabama, not so much up here because of how our mountain walks the pipes, but yeah. So that's not really a good scenario. Now, on the other hand, you have law and liberty. You have all your property rights, personal freedoms, and such, living the libertarian dream. Unfortunately, so are all your neighbors, and some of your neighbors, they don't really keep their yards as clean as they do. You get people who farm their yards, plant flowers, keep their yards pretty. But then you have people next to them who just don't mow their yards, leave cars out in the middle of the lot, they don't even walk anymore. Which one or two of them is a quality. A bunch of them on every corner is a junkyard. And so you then also have feral cats and dogs running around. The fire ants and stickies are still a problem. And a lot of people just throw their trash out in the yard, so yeah. The housing prices, they're not as high as they would be, but things are more running down. People get sick more often because that pollution runs off into your yards, into your food supply, your drinking water. Makes it harder to farm. But you do get occasional little islands of, prettiness. So, what is the solution? Neither of these two extremes. Throw them both out. Both are really bad ideas, and we need to avoid them. Now, we need a middle ground solution. Now, my suggestion is, well, we don't need to get rid of all the ordinances and also not make new ones. We just need to change them a little. Give them a little update. You see, vegetables, gardening, and such, we need to encourage that more. People need more sunlight, and we also need vegetables. Now, so we need to encourage people to grow vegetables and stuff in their yard, not ban that. Now, people really much like being able to repair their trucks and cars themselves. So, and like, my own mother personally has complained about this because the ordinance officers back in, well, long before I was even born, got onto her for having a truck out in the yard up on cinder blocks for it to be repaired. And we had to get that truck towed away. Sorry, Travis. So, yeah. So, yeah. May relax on those specific ordinances that go into people's property rights and individual freedoms to, like farm in the city. That's main school system. We literally call the Aggies, well, agricultural city. Like, let us farm. It's in our nature. But you should focus those ordinances on building codes, on making sure people have safe, clean housing, don't pollute the environment from which we farm. I'm mainly concerned about farming. We need a farm, guys. Yeah, other than my manic rantings about farming, we need to, stop pollution and littering, because, well, the main reason people have these ordinances is the housing value. That's a bit expensive now, so, yeah, we're good on that, guys, but mainly we should be concerned about like the local ecosystem and such, because like that plastic and stuff, and it doesn't just get into like the animals and plants and makes them sick. Eventually it gets into us and gives us cancer. You don't like cancer, do you? So yeah, don't litter, keep your yards clean, pick up all the plastics and stuff, dispose of that. Yeah. Just make sure that all the yards are clean. And just like make sure people are safe and healthy. Doesn't affect anyone if you're repairing your car. And hey, if you leave it out there rusted into like a statue kind of thing, just make sure it's not leaking any chemicals and stuff, and it should be fine. Grow as many vegetables as you like. Just don't use too much fertilizer or overuse the soil too much. Have some of your neighbors like inspect it and like double check you as like a second opinion type thing, rather than just making that the ordinance officers or agricultural department's problem. Just work together as a community, and we can have all our freedoms and benefits. Now, to actually enforce all this stuff, as I said just a few seconds ago, we need volunteers, like myself. It gets kind of boring in the city sometimes, guys. Like, give me a job. Put me to work, homie. But either way, have volunteers like myself and my little Red Arrow group, or the Make Albertville Beautiful movement. Well, mainly have like the ordinance guys, the Make Albertville Beautiful movement. Have them teach us the ordinances, make them, like have experts plan that out to make sure everything's well kept and plan the city out to follow a signed guideline on how to farm it, so we all get to benefit from our property, how to better use it for the good of all our community, and then have volunteers like me and some of the other youths around Albertville. Um, and so instead of forming street gangs, we formed little like just neighborhood farmers. I don't Aggies. Just call us Aggies. By the way, we go around, doing yard work and stuff, helping helping the different like yard care companies and such mow people's yards, do farming on occasion with our neighbors, inspecting stuff to make sure it's up to code, and instead of just snitching on people when those codes aren't violent, or I guess snitch on them if they're like disrespectful and just ignorant, like actively going against the law. But if they're ignorant, educate them, help them adjust, and you know, but forgive them for their sins. Adjust their ways, build things up properly. Stuff like that. Now, the second point, let people grow, farm their land where, rent it out, use it how they want, and mainly, as I've already said this before, we need to build up bigger housing that's not just one-story suburb housing. Like, this is getting old. Our population has outgrown it. We need something new. Like the suburbs, that was the old generation stuff. And if we continue down that line, our housing is just going to get more expensive. Our population isn't going to grow. It's just going to get smaller and older until we're extinct. And, we're losing a lot of the family ties. Guys, like, we're not as close to our relatives as we used to be. We're more isolated, living in smaller apartments. So instead, build bigger houses. They can have multiple families, extended families living together as a family, as a household, keeping all of our customs instead of sending our elders off to nursing homes for retirement. Have them stay at home so they can enjoy that with the family, while still, contributing to society. Not with like taxes and monetary. No, they're above that at this point. They've earned their right to relax, but also their right to contribute to the next generation. Raising the children. Because studies have shown that people who have grandparents develop better. For instance, I never had a father. Now, the reason I'm not in a street gang right now isn't just because my mother alone raised me. Honestly, she was out walking all the time and barely raised me at all other than like a few values that most fathers don't give their children. I don't have daddy issues. By the way, my mama raised me and my sister, my cousins, and step-cousins and step-brothers. She raised a lot of children, Mama Nancy. And also is raising all their kids and stuff too. So like mamas, papas, grandparents, abuelas, all of that. We need those grandparents to raise the next generation of children, because parents are often inexperienced, and they're also hardworking adults who need to, contribute every waking hour to the capitalist labor economy. Not sure why y'all call me a communist, but either way, the grandparents need to raise the children, or more so contribute to raising them, helping to teach them, tutor them in school, show them how to, do stuff like cooking, cleaning, sewing, how to interact with others, showing cultural traditions and stuff, storytelling, stuff like that. This will maintain our traditions, our heritage, our culture, which people in Albertville are very, very fond of, even more than most other Americans, as here we are very diverse. We have Guatemalans, Cherokee, Germans, Italians, French, Mexicans, El Salvadorians, Venezuelans, Haitians, Scots-Irish. I'm gonna be here a lot longer than I want to be if I list all of them out. But anyway, yeah, we have a lot of different peoples with a lot of different unique families, with a lot of different stories and cultures. Those cultures will die out if they do not, unite together into their little blocks with other cultures and, maintain their traditions. Now, I'm not saying isolate them off into little self-sustaining blocks, so, to, well, sorry, no, that's segregation. Have them live in their houses to maintain their culture, but don't just isolate them off from society. Have them interact with their neighbors as well. Like, for instance, little potlucks and parties and such. They all go to the same school system and such, or school systems, so they interact with others. They'll still expose the outside world without losing their traditional values. That's like the reason religion is kind of like falling off in the country is because, well, people started making religion more fundamentalist, more like extreme, and like more focused on preserving like specific old scientific truths that we discovered back in like 2000 BC and such, like in the days of Plato. But that science and such is outdated, while the religion's philosophies, God's word, all that stuff, the love, that didn't change until you stopped, well, following it, until you stopped making it important. What's written down specifically in a book does not matter. What matters is love. What matters is connection. You still should obey the framework and stuff of it, but don't make it too serious. The main thing is about, cultural connection, more like using it as allegory. For instance, everything we know now in science, reality, all of that is going to eventually change as our perspective changes. You have to adapt. But if you just, but to adapt, you have to have structure. I'm going off a bit topic here, but you have to have structure. You have to have, you have to have your family unit to grow and evolve from that. I'm gonna trigger a lot of unsettled this, but either way, you have to, you have to grow naturally. You can't just like make ourselves more and more isolated and trying to trap children and people in an old version of the world that was like what you grew up on. Because if you do that, as soon as they get exposed to the outside world, they realize you've been raising them in North Korea, essentially. So you have to make a framework that, well, keeps all your traditions, your family connection there. Allow them to interact with the world, form their own opinions, but always be able to come back home to the people they care about, people who know them and have raised them, and be safe. Now, for the fourth point, we need more sidewalks and art projects and such. We need, well, traffic needs to be solved. We need to stop speeding. We need better transportation and such. But we also need reasons to travel. We need to connect people from across the town together, give them reason to visit each other. We need little monuments and more scattered little marketplaces and such, and make it easy to get there on foot or cheaply by bike, taxi, Uber. Maybe bring back the passenger train. in that. So that way people will go out and move around town, engage in the economy, engage in our local culture, society, learn about each other, interact and live. You know, just do all this different stuff. Now, apologies. Yeah, sorry, I was out late last night filming a fall game with Aggie Vision. Uh, had a little smoke and such stuck in my lungs. That's something else we need to solve, Albertville. Um, we're beginning to, as our population has expanded, our sewage output has increased. Now, I mentioned earlier that Albertville, unlike a lot of like poor residents or places in Alabama, all sewage pipelines and such, they are very strong, very sturdy, still made of lead, but they don't seep into the ground. Instead, because we're on top of a mountain and the air pressure often gets pretty low, our sewage plant, the stuff from the sewage goes up into the air because it's hard to contain it up here. Now technology has advanced some to fix that, but not really that much stuff we can do because of the pressure difference. Because if you figure out a good way to keep that contained and stuff, you then have to go through the issue of removing it from that containment because the reason it's going up into the air is because it's hot, it's it generates heat and it's rising. And if you put a lid on that, it builds up and explodes. I don't want to see our sewage plant exploding. So we're gonna have to solve that. Plus also the chicken plants and such, they also leave smells and such. Thankfully they're only noticeable in certain parts of the city. And then there's also like the factories and such, both here and in Boaz, which produce smoke, which also rises and falls mainly in the downtown area. Now, planting trees and such will help with this stuff as they absorb the CO2 and methane that those produce. But we're gonna need to plant a lot of trees and possibly build up vertical towers for vertical farming with hydroponics and such, which will help reduce the sewage as we can then use that as fertilizer. Though we'll have to sterilize it to make sure no diseases and bacteria make it in. But I mean, it's what fertilizer is, so we can use the chicken, waste from the chicken plant and our sewage plant as fertilizer. I also have a plan B, and that is move them right onto the ball with Boaz. May even just ditch the sewage plant entirely. Let's just dump our sewage onto Boaz. Why not? Or maybe off into Gainesville. Yeah. But either way, we're gonna need to solve that issue. Now, thank you all for watching. Don DeGoahe. That was this episode of, I guess just me. Now, thank you. Sorry. I will see you guys next time. Until then, I've been James Tyler Epperson, also known as Ideal Teresa. Thank you for watching. Good night.